Warning, the following video contains spoilers. If you don't want this episode spoiled for you, switch the video off now.
The Timeshift.
The leaks. It's true. All of it. What did you think about this week's episode of Doctor Who, and what did you think about the series as a whole? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, favourite, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube's an increasingly scary place of small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It does them a power of good. Look, I know I'm going to lose a lot of goodwill when I say this, but I didn't hate it. I didn't hate this week's episode of Doctor Who. I mean, maybe it's because of the fact that I've known about this big revelation for weeks now, and I've kind of made peace that this is what they were going to end up doing with it. Maybe it's the fact that I've been so inoculated from years of watching bad movies and having bad ideas that when something like this comes around, I just don't feel it quite as profoundly as other people. I mean, when you've seen Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla 5 times for the sake of review, you know, it's kind of hard to call stuff like this terrible. Or maybe it's just the simple fact that from a ones and zeros perspective that this episode is perfectly fine as a series finale. It does everything that a season finale needs to do. It wraps up the major storyline in a kind of cluttered, though ultimately serviceable way. I detest the ending, though we'll get onto that shortly. But it has all the thrills and spills I suppose you really need from a series finale. Even if, at the end of the day, none of it matters! I mean, even Ruth, in the episode itself, says that none of this matters. So we'll get onto that bit in just a moment. This episode turned out exactly as I worried it would do, at least structurally. The main focus of this story wasn't going to be the stuff with the Cybermen. Instead, it was going to be about the Doctor and the Master solving the mystery of the
Timeless Child.
And in the end, that's exactly what it was. It was mostly focused around the stuff with the Doctor and the Master and all that mystery, and the secondary focus was the stuff with the Cybermen. They were just pushed off to one side and then just dealt with as though they were nothing more than a mild inconvenience, much like the stuff in the second part of Spy 4 with the whole stuff with the Stenza or whatever the name is. In the first episode, they were a big major threat. In the second episode, the Doctor solved the day by doing a clever thing off screen, and this week it's solved by just some random guy we barely know pressing a button. I mean, just no on almost every level, no. And you know what the real thing that really rubs me, not the major thing that rubs me the wrong way, but we don't get much of a backstory, or much of a understanding as to who the Lone Cyberman really is. Like, this is probably one of the more compelling and interesting villains we've had in Doctor Who in quite some time. He's a Cyberman who still has his emotions, a figure who seems to have willfully become a Cyberman. Why he did that, his motivations for doing that, all of that just doesn't matter now. He was thrown away, thrown to one side the moment that the Master discovered the thing about the death particle. The death particle in and of itself is an interesting idea. It's something that maybe you develop a 2-parter to, or a whole story act to. But it was just introduced really just so that Chibnall had something in the storyline that would help the Doctor save the day in the end with as little time as possible, which is exactly what ended up happening in the end. All the stuff with the
Timeless Child.
ultimately is meaningless. It means nothing because in a season or two's time, it'll all just been forgotten, all just be shrugged off and never mentioned ever again, like every other major change to the lore and the backstory of this show. Like the whole thing in the 8th Doctor's movie where he says he's half human on his mother's side. All the stuff in the early days of Doctor Who where the Doctor was a human from the far future who built the TARDIS himself, and that Susan came up with an acronym for TARDIS. Or the days in the 4th, I think it's the 4th Doctor, and certainly the 7th Doctor's time when the Doctor's real name was Theta Sigma, or any other number of different plot threads and ideas and concepts that have just been thrown away over the years. It means nothing. No one's ever really going to make mention of this ever again. The closest thing I can see to this being substantial is that so that when the 60th anniversary comes along, they can get some celebrity cameos playing past incarnations of the Doctor that we've not seen at this point, which, sure, I'm sure that'll be great fun, but for me, here and now, yeah, no, I really don't like that. I mean, I don't like the idea of the Timeless Child to begin with, but if this is just an excuse to have Rupert Grint or Idris Elba playing the Doctor for the sake of a single episode, yeah, no, sorry, that's not good enough. That really isn't good enough. That is Moffat levels of bending over backwards to make the canon serve your purposes, and I really do not like that. And another reason why this all doesn't matter is the fact that now, you know, this episode we find out who the Doctor is and where they came from. But at the same time, we don't. We know the Doctor is the Timeless Child, but we don't know really where they came from, or who they are, or who their parents are. They're just as much of a mystery as they are now, as they were for all their time on Gallifrey from when they were a child up until the point that we first see them in the TV series. It's all just a big mystery. If anything, they've just swapped mystery out for another. Really, like for like, we know about as much about the Doctor now as we always ever did. So really, that ends up begging the question once again as to why bloody bother? None of this matters. None of this really cares, because it doesn't change who the Doctor is functionally. It's not going to change their personality. It's not going to change their outlook on life. It's not even going to change who they see themselves as being. They're always going to end up being the Doctor in the end. And for all the users getting upset about how this craps upon the legacy of Bill Hartnell, well, at the end of the day, he's still the first Doctor. The same way that Christopher Eccleston is still the 9th Doctor, even though there is a 9th incarnation before his. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because to us, he'll still be the first Doctor. He'll still be the one that got this whole ball rolling. And as far as we're aware, he's still first Doctor, technically, because he's the one that left Gallifrey in the police call box and had these adventures. Though at the same time he isn't, because Ruth, who is a previous incarnation of him apparently, still has a police call box that's still shaped like a bloody... that's still a police call box. It's a TARDIS shaped like a police call box and still calls themselves the Doctor. So I just... unless she's Series 6B, I just... good God. All of this, it really just amounts to much ado about nothing. It changes so much, but at the same time so little. You know, I was going to talk about the performances at this point, but I can't. I just can't at this point. Like, Graham and Yaz, they had a really sweet moment. I really wish it had gone somewhere, because at the end of the day, we all knew the Timeless Child stuff was going to go nowhere. So now, with that said, we at least should have had something that was going to take some risks, but we didn't. They just all survived to the end of it, and they'll be back next season, which makes me think that when Jodie leaves, which you probably will do at the end of the 3rd season, as they always end up doing, you know, Jodie will end up leaving, as will her companions, and maybe even Chibnall himself. It may be one out, all out. We'll soon see where that is all going, but for the time being, we can enjoy another season of Graham, Yaz, and Ryan. The major issue that I have with this episode, beyond the Timeless Child stuff and how it shakes the canon up in ways that mean everything and nothing simultaneously, it's the ending. Not the stuff with the Jadoon. That was funny, that was cute, and I really like the fact this episode had a cliffhanger which leads itself into the Christmas special, which is actually going to be a Christmas special, as it should have been for the past couple of years. But hey, I won't hold that against the BBC, as there's other things you can hold against the BBC for anyway, but whatever. The big problem is the stuff with the old guy and the detonator. Here at the end of our series finale, at the end of a story arc which really has been going on for 2 series, it's not solved by the Doctor, it's solved by just some random guy we got introduced to last week, who hasn't really had much of a personality or character development for them. They're just kind of there, and they're there because Chibnall wrote himself into a corner. The Doctor doesn't fix anything, then she's not challenged, she doesn't have to grow, she doesn't have to change. Her pacifism would have ruined the day, would have made the Master win in the end, even though with that 80-yard bit of dialogue where he goes, "Everybody, quick, in here!" Chances are he's still alive with Siberian, with a handful of his Time Lord Cybermen creatures who probably will be used to resurrect the Time Lord race, because, you know, we've got to bring the Time Lords back into it almost as soon as we take them out of it, because the Time Lord's existence at this point is like one big game of hokey cokey, but you know what, whatever. You know, this whole moment robs our main character of agency on purpose, or having to change and evolve as a character. The Doctor now in this moment has to press the button, has to make the final sacrifice, has to do the thing to actually save the universe, and she doesn't do it. She outsources it to someone else to take the burden, the weight, and the feeling of that. You know how originally it was said that it was Eccleston's Doctor, or at least the McGann's Doctor, who was the one that did the dirty, that destroyed the Time Lords, and how the Doctor ended up having to live with that whole burden for years of her life, and then Moffat came along and said, "Oh yeah, it was just one big misunderstanding." That's effectively what this is. The Doctor hasn't really, grown. Any kind of trauma or past problems they've had due to their involvement of the Time Lords and the Time War and now the Cyber War, it really is not going to mean anything in the end. And even the big revelation about the Timeless Child, that's not going to mean anything in the end. So in the end, everything, it just doesn't mean anything. Look, let's just go into the overview now and wrap this up, because I just want my Monday mornings back. Okay, so now the overview. What do you think about the episode as a whole? And as a whole, I have to say that, like I said in the opening, it's not terrible. It's not a nightmare. It's not Orphan 55. It's not Kill the Moon. It's not In the Forest of Midnight. It's not the weird shit with a shielder. It's certainly not the hybrid stuff either. It's a perfectly serviceable series finale, which at the end of the day, as I've said time and again, changes everything and nothing. I have problems with it, and it does cause major question marks with this series and the whole decision to do it in the first place. There's a wealth of things I could pick apart with this episode, but if I did that, this episode would be going on way too long. Maybe in the future I'll do an everything wrong with this show, everything wrong with this episode video, and then maybe I'll shoot myself for wanting to do that, because I don't do that stuff. I never do it. I hate that kind of stuff. Everything wrong with that thing that you like. Oh, don't you feel like an asshole because I have a different opinion than you and mine's objectively right because I've had a class once in filmmaking? Like, favourite, subscribe to Cinema Sins and or anybody else that's doing that. Oh god, look, this is just falling into unbridled rage at this point, so let's just deal with it. Look, the fact that Ruth is pre-Hartnell, I have no issue with that per se, but I have issue with the fact that somehow she has a police call box as a TARDIS when that doesn't make any bloody sense for her to do so. So that only leads into my mind that she must still be Season 6B, because otherwise it just makes no sense. And even in the episode itself, Ruth says that none of this really matters, so why as an audience should we really care? I mean, the thing with the Time Lords being kept on ice, that's meaningless, because they're dead bodies. It doesn't matter if the Doctor destroys their bodies or not, because what can you do with them? What can you do to bring them back? You can't do anything to bring back a dead body. Or at least, not unless it's Gotham, or certain aspects of this show. But, those are discussions for different times. But like I said, I could go through this episode with a fine-tooth comb and just go through everything that doesn't work now, but I don't want to, because it's just going to waste my time. I don't like doing that. Like I said, I don't like doing that stuff, but in the end, it's a perfectly serviceable series finale that does the job as effectively as one could hope for, even if for people like me, it just doesn't work at all, really, and it really is just much ado about nothing. In the end, I'm not angry at the revelation of the Timeless Child and all that stuff. I'm not angry about it, and it makes no odds or sods to me at the end of the day whether Ruth is pre-Hartnell or Season 6B or someone from the future. Maybe it's the fact that I've made peace with the fact that this is what the storyline was going to be doing. I really don't know, but for me, it doesn't matter. I know a lot of people are upset and angry about that, and I don't want to take anything away from your unbridled rage or your passion for the show. I really don't, but for me, given the sheer amount of stuff that's changed over the years, in and of itself, it doesn't matter. What matters, I think, is the way that it's executed, and the way that it's executed just feels like a lot of bungling. This should have been a three-parter. Episode 1 should have been the same. Episode 2 should have been focused entirely on the Timeless Child. And Episode 3 should have been the Cybermen. At least then the whole mystery would have been solved and sorted properly, rather than just having a random guy running out. And the Timeless Child stuff in the end was meaningless, because it doesn't change our character at all. It just adds stuff into the lore and makes stuff more complicated just because. It kind of feels like someone made a wish on the magic monkey's paw and said, I want Chibnall to make a season that goes deep into Time lore and Doctor Who lore, and this is what we got. And what we got is something that's, at the end of the day, really insubstantial, because it's changing nothing. Mark my words, this will almost never be brought up again, apart from maybe the 60th anniversary episode, when maybe we'll have a few celebrity cameos as unseen incarnations of the Doctor, but we'll soon find out. What did you think about this week's episode of Doctor Who and the series itself? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you shortly, either directly in the comments themselves or towards the end of next week's video. And if you like this video, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube's an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Be sure to do that stuff, because YouTube's an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Thank you. As for me, I'm Gonna let all this settle a little bit more. I'm gonna edit up this video, and then next week we'll get into the series review. And it will actually come next week and not years in advance, as almost always seems to be the case. So, thank you for watching, and goodbye!